across the borders. Things are happening globally now. So we've gone from tribal to global, and I think our politicians haven't caught up yet. I think they are still sort of, it might be the last roar of the lion. You guys know about the last roar of the lion? A lion, just before it dies, gives out a huge roar. You know, big roar, and then boom, dead. I think that when you see people kind of, the politician putting up these borders to try to keep people out, they are in effect making that last roar of the lion before we all go global. And so let me kind of tell you, I've been in the venture capital business now about 33 years, and I've seen the computer revolution, I've seen the internet revolution. The internet revolution was really extraordinary. It went from individuals kind of having to fly to other countries to visit 3-4 times before the business began to build the kind of trust that it needed to do any kind of business across borders, to all of a sudden we funded Hotmail, and I gave them that idea to put a little message at the bottom of everybody's email. It was supposed to say, P.S. I love you, get your free email at Hotmail. And you click on it, and then the next person could sign up. So you'd send it to somebody, they'd click on that, and then they could immediately sign up for Hotmail, and it was a way of spreading Hotmail very quickly. It spread to 11 million users in 18 months across borders, everywhere around the globe. And to this day, well, the entrepreneur fought me a little bit. They said, okay, we're going to do this, but no P.S. I love you. I think to this day, if they had left in the P.S. I love you, we would have had a much more peaceful and loving world. But in any case, we did connect. We all connected, and that was a major change. And so the internet changed communications in a big way. It changed information. I funded Baidu. It became an enormous success. And Google on this side became an enormous success, spreading information. And then it changed gaming and entertainment and media. It changed all of these industries. All these industries are in the $10 to $100 billion range. They're big, big industries. Well, now we have one of the most transformational technologies that's ever hit any of us ever. And it's Bitcoin and all the associated technologies with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is decentralized. It's open, it's transparent, it's global. It's a currency we can use anywhere in the world, except maybe China. I don't know. You're working on that, I hope. It can be used anywhere in the world, and so think about this. You're from Sudan, and you're sitting there in Sudan, and you've got a pretty wealthy family. And everything's good, you have Sudanese money, everything's good, and then the military comes in and drives you out of your country, and you become a refugee in Greece. And the Greeks don't take any Sudanese money, and so you have to start over with nothing. Well, if you had Bitcoin, you could arrive in Greece, the country drove you out, you could start your life over, and you might not even miss a beat. This is a big opportunity for all of us. It's really interesting. And let me tell you how the industries that are going to change because of this are much, much bigger than anything the internet changed. Because it is so open and so global and so transparent, it's shining light on the entire earth. And so let me give you a few interesting examples. Okay, first, Bitcoin is, just so you know, this is a currency that people are using that is global, transparent, open, decentralized, completely free of any political force. And the blockchain that Bitcoin runs on is a perfect ledger. It keeps perfect track of information. So it keeps perfect track of where the money goes, but it also keeps perfect track of data, any kind of data. And then people have come up with the idea of a smart contract. The smart contract uses the blockchain and Bitcoin, well, or any other currency, to create a deal in software. So if something happens, then we, let's say we make a bet on a game, China versus the US in soccer. I bet on the US, you bet on China. When the event happens and China beats the US, and we each put a Bitcoin on the bet, the 2 Bitcoin go right to you. And it's automatic. So think about that for, let's say, insurance. Okay, so let's start with insurance. Insurance is one of the very enormous trillion-dollar industries. Insurance is basically you pay your premiums, you pay, and then you have a claim. And what do? You put your claim in with the insurance company and they fight you. And it's like, oh God, no, it's not 3,000, it's 2,000. And they're fighting back and forth. Finally, they do pay you something, but it's like 6 months later, and you're exhausted, and it's ruined your life for a while, and whatever. Well, now, insurance can be specific to events. Like you say, my house got hit by a hurricane. The event can be proven with satellites or whatever you can. Or wind speeds that hit your town, you can say, yeah, my house got blown down by a hurricane. It happened. Someone died. It happened. A plane went down. It happened. A car crashed. It happened. We can actually see that these things happen. And so in a smart contract, you can set up your premiums, so you're paying. And then when the event happens, somebody gets sick, whatever, that event automatically would trigger the money and the money would go to you right away. Okay, so what does this make you think? Well, first, the insurance industry is going to go through an enormous transformation. Just the way banking is starting to go through a transformation because of Bitcoin, insurance is going to go through this huge transformation. And then, well, if you take that a little farther, what is government? Government is an insurance program. Government keeps you safe and government provides healthcare and infrastructure and a number of other things that all help out. Well, 80% of them are insurance programs. It's like healthcare insurance and your pension and unemployment insurance and Social Security. All these things are insurance-based. So this means that governments are going to benefit from this technology. They're going to be able to bring them in, and they're going to run much more efficiently and effectively, and that's going to be really extraordinary. Well, there's something else. I've made another leap. And that is, governments are going to be able to provide those services cross-border. So if you're the government that provides the best of one kind of service, people can use that, and it doesn't have to necessarily be somebody who lives in your geographic territory. And the reason I came up with this idea was that the Prime Minister of Estonia came to Draper University. I started a school for entrepreneurs called Draper University of Heroes, and it's just like encouraging people to be better people. We've had a lot of great Chinese entrepreneurs, and they've done extraordinary things, and that's been really exciting. And so the Estonian Prime Minister came and said, just by instituting digital signatures, we save 2% of our GDP. I'm like, whoa. And then by using digital voting, all the young people started to vote. And then with digital identity, the crime rate went down and the business climate improved. And then he hands me a card. He hands me this card. And he says, you are now the third virtual resident of Estonia. And I said, well, that's great. What do I do with that? And he said, well, now you can open a bank account, buy real estate, open a business anywhere in the EU with this. I thought, wow, he's crossing borders. He's providing services across borders. And that got me thinking, governments are now competing for us. They, just the way the guy who built this microphone, or my tie, or these monitors, had to compete with all the other companies providing microphones, ties, and monitors, governments now have to compete for you. Because if they don't, you have legs, and you have the ability to go to another country, and you can live in one area and have one government provide those services, and you can have other governments provide virtual services for you. It's sort of a new concept, and it might be kind of weird to wrap around your head, because we've been tribal for thousands of years, and all of a sudden we're now global. This is one of the concepts that makes me very heartened. They asked me to sign my name out there, and I said, okay, I'll sign in English, and then they said, well, how would you like this? And I said, well, now I want to sign in Chinese, and they said, well, Tim, Draper in Chinese would be, and I said, no, I want to sign something, I want global love. So up there by my signature, you'll see global love in Chinese. They showed me how to do it. I did sort of a poor version of it, but it's there. You can read it. If you're Chinese, you can read that, and you'll see. Because I'm looking and I'm saying, we're one globe. This is incredibly exciting. We are going to prosper in an enormous way once governments realize that they have to compete for us, and they start competing. They're going to provide better and better services, and because they have competition now. I mean, it used to be you kind of had your territory, and you kind of, if you're the king of the government, king of your world, you kind of tell everybody what to do, and they all have to do it. Well, now it's like they want to attract people. I had another experience, and it was my first experience in China. And that was, I went to China, it was my second experience in China. The first time I went, it was to provide aid to China. I was with my dad, and he worked for the UN Development Program. Second time, though, I went and I talked to the Minister of Finance, and he said, well, you have to invest in our country. So I sensed that somebody was trying to compete for me. And I said, well, why would I invest in your country? I just talked to a guy who created a chocolate company that you guys just nationalized. And he said, what? And I said, yeah, the government saw that it got to be worth $90 million, and they just took it from him. And he said, well, what would you suggest? And I said, well, I would suggest that if anybody puts money into your country, from our country or from any other country, that you do your absolute best to make sure that they can get their return and get it back out of your country. And he said, well, okay, why would that be? And I said, because he's going to tell all his friends, and they're going to all figure it all out, and they're going to all come in here and get so much more investment money than you ever imagined. The word spreads like that. And so I went away for a couple of years, 5 or 10 years, and then I came back, and I realized that China had listened. I was able to invest in a whole bunch of interesting companies, and we had enormous returns and enormous success. We funded Baidu, Focus Media, Kongzhong, ePay, a number of amazing, huge, wonderful successes in China. And we were able to repatriate the money, and it was interesting. The first day Baidu went public on NASDAQ here in the US, and the first day the price went from 18 to 125, and all the investors looked and went, whoa, all my compatriots were going, what did Draper do? How did he get, what happened here? How did this happen? And so then they all went to China and they started to invest in China and they did very, very well. Well, recently it's gotten a little bit tighter in China. And so investment in China is a little bit tougher. You got to make sure you get if you invest in China, maybe you do it through another, not a Chinese government entity, but something else, because we have had some difficulty investing in China. And I want to make sure that you guys, if you have any influence, get back to the government and say, hey, your first Silicon Valley venture investor is now pulling the plug. He's leaving China because he can't get his money out of China. And that, you know, I was the bellwether on the way in. I'm also the bellwether on the way out. And I would just make sure that the government opens up. Because the more open one government is, the more open the other government is. I mean, I'm thinking of the US and China. And as they open up, everybody benefits. We get the benefit of all of the creativity in China, they get the benefit of all the creativity that goes on in the US, and all the business that happens between the two countries. It is enormous. And so I think that it would be great for both countries to just start thinking, hey, let's figure out how to work together. And it's not both countries, it's really just two leaders. Get them together, let them figure it out, and let us do our business. And free this, get rid of the tribalism, and let's have sort of a Stanford, Berkeley love fest. So I think that's kind of the message I wanted to portray. I'll throw out one more idea just because it's pretty interesting what's going on in the world of artificial intelligence. In AI, we have a company called Collabmetics, and what they can do is they prove that they are a better doctor than the average doctor. The artificial intelligence it's like when Deep Blue beat Bobby Fischer in chess, or they finally beat the Go master. The artificial intelligence is now doing a better job of diagnosing patients than doctors did. So, what does that mean? Well, think about this. Think about big data, and deep learning, and all the interesting things that are going to happen there. I'm going to put all my information up into the cloud, my medical history, but then my blood test results and my genetic history, and then weird things will be up there. Things like my Fitbit results and what I ate for breakfast and who I met, what conferences I've been to, where I sat. All that information is now in there. And that is going to be a much better diagnostic tool than somebody who went to med school for 12 years. But when combined with somebody who went to med school for 12 years, that's going to be transformational. And the drug companies aren't going to like it because they kind of are one size fits all. Oh, you got a problem, brain problem? Here, give you a brain drug. If you got a, thyroid problem? Here, give you a thyroid drug. Well, now it's going to be much more specific to you. And, like the crash test dummy, the data is going to be specific to you, and you're going to get much more better diagnosis. And drug companies are going to have to be much more bespoke. They're going to have to be much more specific, one-to-one. That's going to be a big change. And bringing up a little bit more of the dean's speech, this diversity. We at Draper University, we had a student who created. She had a problem with one of her ovaries, and they had to destroy the ovary in order to make it so they could determine if there was cancer in there. And so she actually came up with a very fine fiber line that went up the fallopian tubes and could determine if somebody had cancer or not. and this was like 6 years ago, and then she got FDA approval and just sold her business for $275 million, and so we put her on our board. But she shows that it's a kind of a perfect example of somebody who's, you know, if you're a guy, you're really not thinking of ovaries or fallopian tubes or whatever. It's pretty interesting. And if you're from one area of the world or another area of the world, you're not always thinking of what could be global. And the greatest companies in the world are global. So I'm going to leave you with that. This is the greatest opportunity in the world for humanity. It has, there will be politicians that resist it, but think of them as the old lions with their final roar. And we, as humans, are going to be so much better off when all these borders are smoothed over, and we'll be able to tell our grandchildren will be saying, what are those booths? And we'll say, oh, that's customs. We used to have to go through something, and a lot of people couldn't get through from one country to another. I think in 1-2 generations, customs are gone, we're one big global world, and we're all better off. So thank you for having me. This is going to be a great time. Go do something cool.